a lieutenant governor makes the argument that slavery, the 3/5 compromise, that individuals who were enslaved were not whole people, was actually justice and equality. Here it is.
The Senate on the Democrat side, they got up and they started talking about how this bill embodies something to the effect of the 3/5 compromise. They were bringing that up. They were saying this is a bad bill because it actually encourages discrimination, just like the 3/5 compromise, going all the way back to the foundations of our nation. I would like to share with you the 3/5 compromise is not a pro-discrimination compromise. It was not a pro-discrimination or a slave-driving compromise that the founders made. It was actually just the opposite. It was a compromise that the North made with the South. At the time, there were basically 13 independent nations. They had not really created a constitution. They were sort of a European Union-esque nation. And they were saying to the pro-slave states, hey, if you want to count your slaves to have representation, more representation in Congress, we're not gonna let you do that.
This is what happens when you go to an institution that doesn't have DEI. There's more misinformation. Here it is.
Now, here you have Senate Democrats in today's American Republic who do not understand that. They think the 3/5 compromise was something that was a scourge on black people. That's not what it was. And how did we get to this place? We got to this place because of DEI in education. We got to this place because you have professors at woke schools that will not teach the history of what actually happened back in the foundations of our nation. Many men and leaders in our nation's history knew how wicked slavery was. They knew that God had created even black people, white people, red people, all people in his image, and they were fighting for equality for all. But they're not taught that today.
Yeah, put them up full mast. Lieutenant Governor, I would expect a man who spent as much time as you did rolling up your arm sleeves so perfectly that you would have studied the content prior. Indiana Lieutenant Governor is facing backlash after claiming the law that declared slaves 3/5 of a person ensured justice and equality for all people. The 3/5 compromise was an agreement reached during the 1787 Constitutional Convention. It determined how enslaved people would be counted for representation and taxation purposes. It stipulated that for every 5 enslaved human beings, 3 would be counted towards the state's population. That sounds equal. The math itself is unequal. And then from it permeates unequal social context, which creates inequality in treatment, behavior. It also provided members of Congress a benefit without having to give black people political power. So by increasing the slave-holding states' congressional representation, the compromise made it nearly impossible to pass legislation that would abolish slavery itself. Another fact that Lieutenant Governor Beckwith does not mention. The compromise is widely seen by historians as an example of amoral peacekeeping between two sides with conflicting interests. It was declared unconstitutional in 1868 following the passage of the 14th Amendment, which granted equal protection and due process to all Americans. Lieutenant Governor, if the 3/5 compromise was actually a guarantee of equality, why is it that once we have our constitutional amendment granting equal protection, now this is just in word, language, and, well, culture notwithstanding, No, equality came, but they couldn't have both coexist. So at least on paper, they said, all right, since we say this, we can no longer say that. Governor, what point are you making? Recent remarks from the governor, all right? So they came after an emotional floor debate on the passage of Indiana's controversial Senate Bill 289. This is your political angle, which seeks to neuter diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts in the state, DEI. The legislation will allow people to sue publicly funded schools or government entities if they're required to undergo trainings that use a characteristic like race or sex to blame one group of people for actions in the past. Does that make sense to you? There's more. The anti-DEI state bill passed the state house with a vote of 64-26 and the state senate with a vote of 34-16 and awaits the signature of the Indiana governor, Mike Braun. This wasn't the first time Lieutenant Governor Beckwith, a pastor in his spare time, by the way, caused controversy with his far-right social media musings. In a previous post on Senate Bill 289, he derided, quote, taxpayer-funded race hustling, end quote, trying to stop the legislation. And last October, while campaigning for Lieutenant Governor, Beckwith claimed his female opponent was a Jezebel spirit, an Old Testament reference to a malevolent influence, according to Christian evangelicals, are almost always a woman characterized by manipulation, pride, idolatry, and seduction. But it was Solomon who had the most flings. All right. Let's put this lieutenant governor back up for a moment. Mm-hmm. He has made the ignorant, bigoted conversation that typically would take place inside of racist households a public speech. So these notions, this misinformation, it is not new. It is what they have believed. I'm talking about real bigots for many years. These bigots simply have power now, and they feel emboldened to say it out loud. Well, at least we know who you are. If nothing else, you're exposing yourselves. And for that, we thank you. All right, Sharon, thoughts here.
Well, I like how you broke it all the way down, Dr. Richey, because my first inclination was to label this person as just an attention seeker. But when you put up his picture, I said, I'm going to pivot. That's a meathead right there. He looks dumb.
Right.
And so I do think I like the way you phrased real bigots, the way your inflection there. He's one, a fool, actually believes what he's saying. And I don't know what to do with him except he can keep staying in his racist household or going up to, they've got these little lodges that people like you don't stop to use the bathroom, Doc, because you're not welcome there.
That's right.
But he can keep it out of my face, the lieutenant governor. He wants more. He's just bottom of the barrel, lowest common denominator.
And their protocol is so simple. They just have to be racist.
Oh my
As long
goodness,
as they're racist.
There it is.
Boom.
Only the best people, Doc.
Yeah. All right, we'll bring you updates on that legislation and the lieutenant governor soon.